Kia ora koutou no mai harimai. This is a Maori greeting from my home country of Aotearoa, New Zealand. That means hello, family, and thank you for welcoming me. So thank you very much. And Tanya, I have no idea what you just said, but I hope that it was nice. It's quite interesting. I was just reflecting with Natalia at the break that I feel like I maybe know more people in this room, being from New Zealand, than maybe some of you do. Antonia, Vitali, Natalia, Biliana, Jos. And that just goes to tell us how small the world is becoming and how this sense and this idea and feeling of how we could be different with ourselves and with our work is everywhere in the world. And we recognize each other, and I think that's a really beautiful thing. So I am in Europe for the past 4 weeks in an ambassadorial role. From EnSpiral, we are a collective of 17 organizations, 17 independent companies, and about 250 freelance contributors. And we've been going for about 6 years, and we've been noticing over the past couple of years, as more and more networks and organizations are starting to emerge, they have been asking us questions about what we've learned, what mistakes we've made, what to think about, and we're just sort of answering the call and coming and sharing our experience. So I was really grateful when the opportunity came to come to Sofia in Bulgaria, so thank you for that. And I think that Biljana is a genius because we've got such a great, diverse group of speakers this morning. So Jos, who is the legend, looking out, with an organization of 10,000. Damian, who is maybe from more of a traditional company background, who's literally transformed his organization. Maren from a startup, and myself from a network. So I think that she's brilliant. One of the things that I've noticed whilst I've been in Europe is the different cultural aspects. And I'm not quite sure about Bulgaria yet, but I think I had a taste of it yesterday when we flew from Brussels to Sofia, and as we landed, everybody applauded. And I thought, oh, it didn't seem that bumpy or scary, but apparently this is a very Bulgarian thing that you do. So I will definitely be taking that away with me, so thank you very much. Another sort of golden thread through everything this morning is I love the fact that we're not theoreticians, we are all practitioners. And I think this is very, very important because we can, I'm similar to Jos, it's like some of these theoretical books, I just, I don't understand them. But I understand what it means to practice. And I understand what it means to move from doing to being. And I think that this is something that we're all in the midst of doing and becoming every day. So yeah, I feel really grateful to be here. Just one question. I'm curious about who is in the room here. So I'm going to ask some questions and just raise your hand if it applies to you. So I think the question was asked before, but who has read the book Reinventing Organizations? Who here works for a startup? Who here works with some sort of agile or scrum methodologies? Who works for a traditional hierarchical organization? Who works for a government organization? Okay, interesting. Thank you for that. It's nice to get a better sense of who's in the room, so thank you very much for that. So just before I get into the practicalities of EnSpiral, because I think we could spend a day talking about this, but we'll go through as quick as we can. I'd like to talk a little bit about my journey. So most of EnSpiral is made up of people from the age of 25 to 35 who have never been institutionalized. So took the decision, you know what I mean, right? Took the decision to work in a different way, find other individuals, other humans that resonated with this way of being, and so did not have the I get emotional when I think about this, the pain that a lot of us have had going to work every day in hierarchical organizations and almost feeling like we're losing a little bit of our soul every time we walk through the door. It's hard, right? But even during my background, senior leadership positions in multinationals from IBM to Hewlett-Packard to Telstra to British Petroleum. So the sort of the biggest of the big, the most crazy, hierarchical, toxic environments that you can imagine, right? But I always knew, I'm a slow learner, right? So it took me 25 years to kind of figure this out. But even during those times, I always had this sense that we could be different with our work. And I always managed to gather a group around me, or we'd recognize each other. And we'd be the ones that would be poking holes in the silos, and doing something different and trying to be more whole and real with ourselves at work. But what happens in big organizations is when that bumps up against the hierarchy, when that calls into question some things, and heaven forbid, it might mean that some of the senior leadership might have to look at themselves, let alone change, things get shut down and you get beaten up. And I've had my heart broken, and that's why, I felt like for years I had to wrap barbed wire around my heart to protect myself. Really, really hard. Another thing that I always thought, and again, I'm a slow learner, that I thought that my personal journey of development and my professional journey of development were two separate things. It never sort of occurred to me that it's the same thing. So there you go. And I really got tired of making little tiny incremental change. So I will always remember this date, September the 14th, 2014, I walked out of my last corporate job and started my new journey. And a big part of what I've learned, and two books that have really influenced me, so it was great, Marin, to see Everyone Culture on your list as well, were obviously Reinventing Organizations for all the reasons we know, and Everyone Culture, which is about becoming a deliberately developmental organization. I'll talk a little bit about this. I mean, all of the things that we know about the 3 teal breakthroughs based on being self-authored, self-authoring our accountabilities. So saying, I am Susan, this is what I'm accountable for, and this is how I'd like you to hold me to account, is something that's so powerful. And as Marin was saying earlier about the job description, so normally you get a job description, and it maybe comes with your pack when you sign your contract, and you stick it in a drawer and you never look at it again, right? So what if we could actually write down, and maybe this is a challenge to all of you in the room today, tomorrow, go into work and write down what it is that you actually do, and maybe compare it to your job description and see if it's different or the same. So yeah, peer-to-peer relationships, and without the need for hierarchy, consensus, or coercion. I think the coercion part is really important for me. Wholeness, bringing all of ourselves to work. We know that normally in corporate settings, the only thing that's valued is that rational masculine perspective, but this causes scarcity and diversity. And that's another thing I wanted to mention. I'm really proud of the diversity in this room. That makes me feel really good. So thank you for that. I get distracted sometimes. But imagine if we could be more whole in our, I know everybody hates meetings, but in a meeting where Vlado could bring his creative side, yeah? And you could bring your silly side, and Jos could bring the fact that he's a great cook into the meeting. Suddenly we're getting 4 different perspectives on the problem instead of that narrow, rational, masculine perspective. Evolutionary purpose, organizations have a life and their own sense of direction, and today, from moment to moment, from day to day, they are only the manifestation of what's come before, what the weather is outside, and who's working on the problem. Moving on to deliberately developmental organizations. And this goes to the wholeness, right? In most organizations, almost everyone is doing a second job, and that second job is spending the day taking on and putting on and taking off masks, right? And it's exhausting, and it's unproductive. What if we could weave our ongoing development into the fabric of what we do every day? What would that look like? How would that serve the prime motivation that we all have, which is to grow and change and become every day? What could that look like? I love one of the case studies in the Everyone Culture book is a company called Do You Curate. And Do You Curate, one of their businesses is movie theaters, cinemas. So if you can imagine everybody that would work in a cinema, you have unskilled young people that are working behind the counter selling the tickets or being ushers. They take so seriously the development of those individuals, just as importantly as the executive team. So working in circle, working in small teams, and continually challenging each other and giving feedback, receiving feedback, and working on the personal and professional developmental aspects of everyone in the organization. What would that look like? What could that look like? So again, if both of these books, right? So Reinventing Organizations and an Everyone Culture. So what is EnSpiral? And how did I come to EnSpiral? I still haven't answered Vitaly's question. So when I'd known about EnSpiral since about 2011. I started in 2011 in Wellington in what I thought was a classic co-working space. So just a bunch of tech geek nerds working together and sharing desks. But what really struck me is that they weren't just individuals hiring desks. They were actually doing value exchange and meaningful value exchange with one another. And what started happening was it wasn't just the coders that were renting desks. All of a sudden, there were accountants and lawyers and professionals and designers coming into this space where they started to share ideas. They started to develop a culture and really started liking each other and wanting to work together. This was in 2011. Big part of my story was around the Christchurch earthquake, but that's a story for another day. But when I finally decided to leave corporate life, maybe 2 or 3 months after this, I read the one and only job advertisement that EnSpiral has ever made, because as you'll learn, EnSpiral doesn't have jobs. And it was called Catalyst, was how they advertised this role. And it was a covert CEO role. But reading this job advertisement and understanding all of the fullness of what was possible around collaboration, autonomy, transparency, diversity, entrepreneurialism, and non-hierarchy just spoke to my heart. But you know what I did? I did nothing. I was too scared. I thought, what are these amazing young people going to want with me? You know, I'm an old, washed up, middle-aged manager, so I did nothing. So fast forward about a year, I was talking to a gentleman who's become a great friend and mentor to me, who's also in the Reinventing Organizations book, Doug Kirkpatrick from Morningstar. And Doug was saying to me, Susan, you're in New Zealand and EnSpiral's in New Zealand. Why aren't you talking to them? And I said, you know what, Doug? I feel, Doug, you're older than me. If they like you, so they might like me too. So I sent an email to info@EnSpiral, and I got set up with a coffee meeting. And I had a coffee, and then another coffee, and then a lunch, and then another coffee, and then another lunch. And I started to understand what this thing is. So let me play this video, which is not coming up on my screen here, so I'm not sure how I'm going to do this. Let me try. It's on the Firefox. Whoops. So we go here, and I click here. It should play. There we go.
Wellington, New Zealand.
No?
Who wanted to work collaboratively and have a positive social impact. So they started sharing resources and jobs.
A range of professionals, from computer programmers and designers to lawyers and accountants, have been drawn to this new way of working together.
The network continues to grow across New Zealand and around the world, collaborating online using digital tools and offline in a shared co-working space and at regular retreats.
Teams
Oh, that's pretty, Billy. Hooray!
come together around inspiring ideas and launch social enterprises.
Yeah, thank you.
EnSpiral began as a group
No.
of freelancers and activists in Wellington, New Zealand, who wanted to work collaboratively and have a positive social impact. So they started sharing resources and jobs.
A range of professionals, from computer programmers and designers to lawyers and accountants, have been drawn to this new way of working together.
The network continues to grow across New Zealand and around the world, collaborating online using digital tools and offline in a shared co-working space and at regular retreats.
Teams come together around inspiring ideas and launch social enterprises.
EnSpiral Ventures contribute money, time, and skills as shared resources to the EnSpiral Foundation.
Everyone decides how to spend the budget together through a process of collaborative funding, where anybody can propose projects.
People engage with EnSpiral at different levels. Friends form the wider ecosystem of supporters.
Contributors participate in collective decision-making, propose projects for collaborative funding, and often work for EnSpiral Ventures.
Foundation members steward the culture and social mission and collectively own the foundation.
EnSpiral creates innovative participatory tools and processes and open sources them.
It's all in service to the vision that began it all. More people working on stuff that matters.
That's that one. Thank you. Thank you. We got there in the end. So EnSpiral, as we mentioned, is a collective of about 17 independent organizations. And these organizations these organizations and ventures join the EnSpiral network in a couple of ways. In the early days, they manifest from the people working together, starting to go on retreats together, and just coming up with great ideas together. But also, and more recently, organizations are seeing the value of joining the EnSpiral network and are deciding to join us. So our ventures include everything from Buckybox, which is about changing the food system, to Lumio, which is an application for collaborative decision-making, to Lifehack, which is a joint venture with the government of New Zealand to achieve better mental health outcomes for young people, to Action Station, which is New Zealand's biggest online collective advocacy organization, and Scoop, who is New Zealand's only independent media outlet. The latest venture to join us is actually from Australia. They're called Ability Mate, and they are working on accessibility for people with physical disabilities around technology. The question that we get asked most often is, with a network of 17 ventures and 250 individuals, how do you ensure that nobody breaks it? Yeah? And the answer is very simple. You join EnSpiral through invitation. So not just anybody can rock up and say, I want to join. You do what I did. You have coffees, you have lunches, you have conversations, you figure out how you fit, you figure out where you can contribute. EnSpiral doesn't have jobs. And you have a series of conversations, and then you will, get an invitation. And you reckon you can contribute? What do you want to do? What do you want to learn? Come on in. And the individual that invites you becomes your steward through the process. So we've got 250 contributors. We got friends, so I consider everybody in this room now a friend of EnSpiral. We've got 250 contributors, and then 40 members. So 40 members in the center, each having one share in the foundation, a non-financial share. So it's our responsibility to steward the culture and the experience of EnSpiral. We make decisions together through a tool called Lumio. We have a consent-based decision-making process, but it's also very, very collaborative. And I always say that one of the most important things, if not the most important thing, that an organization needs to decide when they get together and decide that they want to be a group is deciding how they want to make decisions together. There are many ways to do it. They're all very valid. In Bertzorg's case, all of the decisions are delegated down to the circles and the teams. In some other organizations, direct delegation is given through the holacracy process, where your accountability is the metric for what decisions you can make. Some organizations still try to do consensus decision making, which can be a little bit paralyzing, but that's a valid decision-making process as well. Lumio we call Lumio the love child of the Occupy movement and EnSpiral. So in the Occupy movement in 2011, 2012, individuals all over the world got together and basically had a long-term camp-out sit-in. But they were able to sit in circles and make decisions together. But one of the smells, anybody know the term code smells? Yeah, smelly code. One of the smells of that process was that even though you're trying to give everybody an equal voice, some voices are louder than others. Some voices carry more weight. So how could we potentially use technology to allow all of the voices to be heard in a way that we can have diversity and dissent, but equally come to a situation where we're able to get some coherence and propose change together? I'll just click through these really quickly. Lumio is a way for people to gather, to discuss, to propose solutions, and to decide and act. Lumio is an open source tool. It's free. And I think that this is another important thing to recognize about EnSpiral, is that tools don't drive our culture. Our culture drives the tools that we invent and create. People also ask, how does the foundation survive? How do you get the money if you have no jobs? Completely voluntary. So all of the ventures have an individual level of contribution that they make to the foundation that they decide themselves. Some contribute based on monthly revenue, some do a flat fee, some contribute nothing at all. The only mandatory contribution to the foundation is once a year, contributors are asked to opt in to choose to participate for $100. That's it. We operate on a very skinny budget, obviously, but that's because we have a minimum viable board that is only there to serve the compliance issues of the organization. The way that we spend our money is also done collaboratively. So we don't have a CFO who doles out the strategic budget for the year around marketing initiatives, as if we could even imagine in a world that's as responsive as this, what we might need to be working on 6 or 12 or 18 months from now. And then when you get to the end of the financial year, if you haven't spent your money, you better spend it because you're not going to get it again. So the way that EnSpiral have tackled this is that anybody can raise a budget line. So let's say, for example, Biljana wanted to redo her website. She would raise something called a bucket on co-budget. And I'll take a step back. So for the $100 that I contribute every year, $50 of it goes into the foundation for the admin and compliance. $50 $50 of it stays in my bank account, and I get to spend that money however I want. So if I want to fund Billy's project, I will give her $5 or $10. Think of it as an internal crowdsourcing. So this is how we spend our money together. We're an open source transnational collective. This is very important. When I joined EnSpiral, I had to readjust my language. So intellectual property is something that's non-existent. Licensing is something that's non-existent. Everything that we create is completely open source. Fork it, change it, improve it, merge it back. We're all just in service of more people in the world working on stuff that matters. But, and this is a big, 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 big curiosity. In an organization of anarchists and activists, who does the work? Right? What we were finding is that the people that were doing the work form this sort of dark economy. So it was the people that maybe cared the most, had the most passion for this kind of work, but they got themselves burned out and they got blamed and they felt unappreciated because they weren't being recognized for the work that they do. There's a wonderful paper published in 1970 by a woman called Jo Freeman called The Tyranny of Structurelessness. And what the tyranny of structurelessness talks about is that in a vacuum of leadership, these toxic behaviors based on social capital, on context, on who you know, start to emerge. And yeah, weird stuff starts to happen. So the Foundation Catalyst project is our solution to that. We also have stewards, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. Everything that we do is about self-selection and opt-in participation. We consider objections and dissents gifts. Catalysts don't tell the network what needs to be done, and we work in a strict agile scrum cadence. So I am one of 4 Foundation Catalysts, and every other Monday we get together. And let me just see if I can at least show you. Well, this isn't a live board, and sorry that the focus isn't very good. But what this represents is each of these represent a ticket. Yeah, anybody in the network can raise a ticket for an improvement, and it can be anything from let's see, improve the decision-making agreement to what are we going to do about trialing HubSpot as a CRM, to inviting folks to a retreat. The Catalysts get together and prioritize the tickets and do the work. Every other Friday, we do a live demo for the entire organization, so you can come along and see what work the leadership has done. We also live stream it on Zoom, and we also record it and publish it on YouTube. So I think that we've moved from a level of basic transparency to a real level of openness, where we're encouraging the participation from the entire network. The leadership is not deciding what to do other than prioritizing, but we're actively encouraging this participation from everybody in the network. And one of the biggest learnings that I've had through this process is that when you have a network that is emerging and something that's continually evolving, the care of the organism itself is really important to me, and it's something that brings me great joy to work on. But it took me a while to recognize that that doesn't bring everybody joy. Tanya might be really, really happy working on what brings her joy, and it might not involve stewarding the community. And I think that this is a big thing for a lot of us who kind of have this fantasy that when we move into a self-managing world, that everybody will want to work on everything. So that's been a really big learning for me, and I think for the network as well. How do you curate a culture like this? How do you do this? How do we communicate with and serve 250 people? We do it by organizing for high trust. We don't organize things for a worst-case scenario. We have the intrinsic belief that everybody is in EnSpiral to do good work and to support each other and to love each other, right? And this is something that is really unusual. And it's another thing from the Everyone Culture book. Could we ever get to a place where we use the L word in our work? The L word being love. Yeah? I can honestly say that I love every single member on this wheel. And what started happening was that as we grow, assumptions were being made about the care of people and our relationships. Some people were dipping through the cracks. And so one of our last agreements that we made at a retreat that we had in June was that every member will have a steward and be stewarded. And stewardship is not mentorship, it's not advice, it's not coaching. It's merely me checking in with you once a month to say, how is your heart? How are you feeling? How are you going? And these are the iterative moves that we're making as we're growing, trying not to second guess what the next steps might be. It will probably be a mitosis of some description, but we're not about colonizing. We kind of don't know what will happen, but we know that people are interested in what we've been doing. So how do we do this? How do we take care of the humans? Through things like stewardship, sitting in circles a lot, checking in sometimes 4 times a day, yeah? We do regular retreats, so twice a year we all go away on retreat together and spend 3 or 4 days just being together. Sometimes there's an agenda, sometimes there's not. We use Slack a lot. We just have a thanks channel in Slack, and that's one of my great joys every morning is to check into the thanks channel and just see the gifts that people are giving each other. That's what we do. And I think we have all the tools that we need. We're an open participatory organization. You don't need to be co-located. You know, Marin has shown this as well. We're all over the world. Use principles, not frameworks. One of my favorite metaphors is, who would want a framework, like a frame of a house, when once you put the bricks and mortar and drywall and paint on, the only way you can change it is by knocking it down? Why don't we consider scaffolding? Yeah, so we have scaffolding, and we have different tools, and we can pick up the different tools, and Zori can make us cups of tea, and Jos can tighten the scaffold, and what emerges is going to be something that we never could expect, because it's only a manifestation of who's working on it and whose joy is where. Experiment, fail, iterate, and we can change the way of work. So I'd love to play.